gonna take care of your dad here, huh?
As long as the picture doesn't freeze, we're good.
They don't
Yeah,
want
we're good.
to face that.
Yeah.
Do you guys have children?
Yes, I have an 11-year-old. He's now in the class as well. So it's his first day here. So
Yeah, we know who you are. Excuse me, one second.
It's always better to be in glass. We also tape it,
Sarah.
and then he gives me the link, and I can send it to you, and you don't miss anything. Okay.
That's great.
I'm gonna send you last week's, which was my senior minor. He talked about Jesus Christ. You can see all that
Oh,
on the board. So I have the link for that, so I'll send that to you.
Oh, great.
Okay? Yeah.
Does anybody need a pen?
And I need a pen.
Sprint line.
Yeah, we have some pens. There's some in the back there. Okay.
Oh, yeah, there's some in here. We need any.
Yeah, and make sure they work.
I caught that.
I'm surprised.
Do you have an extra one of these?
I do.
Okay.
I printed 10, and then I'll send when I send the link of the recording, I'll include these in there too.
Okay, great, great.
Everybody's good.
I think we're okay. Lisa told me she is coming. I got an email from
Oh,
her.
okay.
So she and while we're waiting, next week, if you notice for October 25th, whenever it's in green, that means we're not in this room.
Okay.
Okay, so next week, we're gonna visit the Poor Clares, who are in Belleville, and we're gonna visit the King's House, and we're gonna visit the Adoration Chapel at St. Teresa's. So you can kind of get a feel of what we have in Belleville for people who wanna, encourage their spiritual life, give you time if you want. So next week, we'll meet here out on the parking lot. And then you'll just follow me, and I'll take you to the various places. Okay?
Great.
That's what we'll do next week. All right? Okay.
And the Poor Clares has a really cool gift shop, so.
Yeah, they have a gift shop, and of course, if you know anything about the Poor Clares, they're, I didn't think of the word now.
Clustered.
They're cloistered. So the only person you can talk to is what they call the extern sister. But when I call, I usually ask if she'd be available, and then she talks a little bit about their community, and then usually she has the gift shop open. And they have a chapel where you can pray, but you can't see them. They're behind the screen. So we're going to do that. The King's House is a retreat center in Belleville, and the Adoration Chapel is in another parish in Belleville. And when you have the code, you can get in there anytime you want. But I think it's closed now, isn't it?
I think so.
I think it's closed. I can maybe still take them there at least to show them.
Because I used to go on Fridays.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Since the COVID, they've had it closed, but it's usually a 24-hour chapel
Yeah, different people volunteer to take an hour.
to take an hour. Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah, so next week we'll meet here on the parking lot. I'll watch for you all. Okay, and hopefully, Jessica, you'll be here.
so try to be here 15 minutes early or
Yeah.
more, and
Well, it might be good to be here 10 or 15 minutes early so we can, takes a while to get to all those places.
Sure.
Okay, you can start, Robert. I think we're ready to go.
Alright, So we're doing the history of the church, and I picked this to present because this is what brought me back to the church. I fell away for years, and when I was studying the history, I was like, hey, there's really something to this Catholicism, and they're not as bad as everybody told me they were. There are some dark parts of the history, I'm not gonna sugarcoat that, but you have to know that, because other people will throw that in your face, and if you don't know it, it's gonna surprise you. And as I was looking over this last night, I forgot the number one, the first thing that actually happened was Pentecost. I left it off the list. That happened in about 30 AD, somewhere around that time. And it was when the Holy Spirit came down to the apostles and inspired Peter to preach for the first time. That's why they call it the birthday of the church. And then, I don't know if anybody can guess, the answers are on the side, what happened in the year 50. It was a council of Jerusalem. In the Acts of the Apostles, it's the only council that's in the Bible. Some people don't consider it a council. I don't see why not. They were all there and they all made a decision. They decided that Gentiles did not have to follow the law of Moses. Basically, non-Jewish people didn't have to get circumcised, which was cool for the adult males. And they didn't have to follow all the dietary regulations that the Jews did. It did set the course to separate Christianity into its own separate thing, as opposed to just a sect of Judaism. Because before it was just a sect of Judaism, now it's starting to branch off into its own real thing. And then in 64 AD, that was the martyrdom of St. Peter. Paul was also martyred about the same time. There was a big fire in Rome under Nero, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard. Nero fiddled while Rome burned. He had to blame somebody. So he blamed the Christians. And a lot of people died. And Peter and Paul were part of that not so fun time. Supposedly Luke was there too, but he didn't die. He got away. Which is cool because he wrote the gospel after that. So. Then in 70 is the fall of Jerusalem. I put that in there because Jesus predicted it. In his teachings, he said that the temple will fall. And sure enough, it did. They tore it down, every stone, and they've never rebuilt it. Since Nero, there's been somewhat persecutions of the church, not nearly as bad as what Hollywood says there was. But in 312, the Emperor Constantine won the battle at Milvian Bridge. The emperor died, didn't leave an heir, people fought, Constantine won, and the tradition says that he had a dream that if he bore the symbol of Christianity, he would win, and he won. And he made Christianity legal for the first time. So before then, Christians were just kind of tolerated. Every once in a while they were persecuted. After that, they were 100% legal. So they didn't have to hide anymore, which was cool. Before then, it was all a bunch of house churches, and now they can actually build real churches. Oh, there is one other thing I forgot to put in there. In 321, Constantine donated the Lateran Palace to the Christians, and that's cool because that's the seat of the Bishop of Rome. That is still his seat. So since 321, that is the Cathedral of Rome. That is where the Pope actually sits. Just like we have the Cathedral of Belleville where Bishop McGovern sits, that's where the Pope sits, technically. Now that palace is not there, it tore down, but they built a new one. Read 2. That was the Council of Rome. There's not a whole lot known about the Council of Rome, but it was the first time that the 73 books of the Bible were listed. So that's important when the Protestant Reformation comes around. They said these books weren't true. Well, they were listed in 312. 325, some people might know that one. It's a big council, let's see if anybody can guess it.
Is it the Council of Nicaea?
Mhm.
Yeah.
There were a lot of different factions of Christianity, and Constantine was like, you guys need to get together and figure this out. So they did in Nicaea, and they came up with the Nicene Creed. And we say that every day at Mass. And it was big because it declared the Trinity, you know, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. It officially declared that, and this is what we believe, and if you don't believe this, then you're a heretic. And then in 400, did I skip something?
382.
That was the Council of Rome. Where did I?
Council of Jerusalem.
325 was Council of Nicaea.
Yep.
Mhm.
Did I mix up the Rome and the Nicaea? I really.
So I think the council of Rome, I don't know.
We have that, I put that as 382, is that?
Yep, that's right. Okay.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
In 400, we have Jerome. Has anybody heard of St. Jerome?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
No, I hope you have. He is famous for a couple things. One, he lived in a cave, which was kind of interesting. He had a temper, and he translated the entire Bible into Latin. Took him his entire lifetime. They call it the Vulgate, which was like the common people's Latin. There had been other Latin translations, but this one was the official Latin translation of the church. They used that for ever, all the way up until the 1960s. It was what we used in Mass. .431 was another council. Nobody can guess which council that one was.
Trent?
Nope, not yet. That's the, it would be the Ecumenical Council of Ephesus. There were a lot of heresies at the time, saying that God was, or Jesus was all God, but not man. And then there were some others that said he was all man, but not really God. So the Council of Ephesus said, no, he's both. He has both full natures, can't argue it. If you are, you're a heretic. They had to sit around and agree with it. Every time there's a disagreement, they always have a council. And they agreed that he had both natures. So, 596 is just a cool little story. That's where St. Augustine of Canterbury went to evangelize the English. There were a couple English slaves in Rome, and the Pope saw them and said, they look like angels, and sent some missionaries to England, where we came up with the word angels. $756 was an interesting thing. It's the donation of Pepin. Not a lot of people have heard of Pepin, but everybody knows who his son is, and his son is Charlemagne. He gave Rome to the Pope. It was the first time the Pope had secular rule over a piece of land, and it started the Papal States. So now the Pope is the ruler of Christianity, and now he's the ruler of the Papal States, which was a big turning point because now he has a whole lot of power. $1054. I don't know, some people might know this one. Has to do with the Orthodox Church, and we can guess that one.
Great Schism.
Yep, the Great Schism. A couple people from Rome walked into Mass in Constantinople and laid the excommunication papers right there in the middle of Mass and excommunicated the Patriarch of Constantinople and never healed from that. Fourth Crusade didn't help. We'll talk about that later. But there was the true break from the Orthodox Church to the Latin Church. Speaking of Crusades, anybody guess what happened in 1095?
crusade, or?
It was when Urban II called the First Crusade. There was a council, and he gave a speech calling the crusade and inspired Europe to go to Jerusalem and retake it for Catholics. And then the next one obviously would be taking of Jerusalem. So it took them 4 years to get there, and they finally took it. And this is one of those not so fun facts of Catholic history. We were not very nice to the people in Jerusalem. Supposedly, one of the quotes is that the blood of the Muslims went up to their knees. Even the Jews at the time said that they wished the Muslims would come back because they were nicer. And eventually, the Muslims did take it back. And then we had the Second and Third Crusade, which didn't do a whole lot. But between those, we have, 1123 and 1139. They kind of go together. It's the first and the second Lateran councils. Those two together established the priestly celibacy as a rule for the church. It was a tradition, not everybody followed it. There were popes with girlfriends, there were priests with children all over the place, and it was just not a fun thing. So they said, okay, we're following this. All priests will follow celibacy. You're not allowed to have any contact with women except for family members. In 1188, I put this one in here because it was an interesting thing that I found, that Pope Innocent III proclaimed the emancipation of all slaves. So even back as far as 1188, the Catholic Church was against slavery. It was probably before that, but it was the first time a pope officially said it. Since then, a lot of popes have come out and said slavery is bad, but this was the first time I could find. 1204 was the Fourth Crusade. When they wanted to retake Jerusalem, they found out they had no money. The ruler of Constantinople said, hey, we'll pay for it, but you gotta retake our city for us from the Muslims. And they said, okay, we'll go take your city. And when they got there, they found out Constantinople had no money. So they sacked the city, furthering the divide between the Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church. Never even made it to Jerusalem. $1205. Some of you guys might know this one. Because we have the Third Order of the Franciscans here.
Oh. St. Francis,
Yep, St. Francis of Assisi founded the Franciscan Order. And then right after that, St. Dominic founded the Order of Preachers in 1216. It's officially the Order of Preachers, but people just call them Dominicans. Those two orders have been huge in the church. Catherine of Siena, a saint and a doctor of the church, said that they were truly, Dominic and Francis were two pillars of the Holy Church. Francis with his poverty, that was his homework, and Dominic by his learning. They did some, one of the popes said they saved the church. I can't remember which pope it was, but those two orders, they're around today. We have a Third Order of Franciscans in Belleville, don't we?
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a Third Order of Dominicans in St. Louis too. The Third Order is lay people. First Order is priests, Second Order is nuns, Third Order is everybody.
Yeah, both of my grandmothers were in a member of the Third Order of Franciscans.
Christopher Columbus was a Franciscan, which I'll mention later. I didn't know that until about 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
I didn't know until I read the obituary, and it's like, it was a big deal. They read the Liturgy of the Hours every day. Morning prayers, the mid-morning, the afternoon, evening.
You do all 7?
I do 5.
Oh, okay. I tried doing all. I did 7 once, and I was like, that's just too much. I just do the morning and evening prayer. I don't know how the monks do it.
That's what religious women do, morning and evening prayer. Because during the day you're out working, you can't do it.
Yeah, you
You
can't
know?
work and pray, work and pray.
Work and pray,
You gotta get
work and
working.
pray, yeah.
If you don't work, you don't.
Don't eat during Remember, that's what one black person said, if you don't work, you don't eat.
1305, this one's a fun one. The Pope moved to Avignon. Everybody associates Rome with, the Pope, because he is technically the Bishop of Rome. At that time, they elected a French cardinal to become Pope, and he was in France, so he was making his way down to Rome, and King Philip IV stopped him, said, "You're not leaving France." And he had him stay in Avignon, which technically wasn't France, it was part of the Papal States, but it was right on the border of France. They call this the Babylonian captivity of the church.
They're the ones that got the bridge that only goes halfway across the river.
Yeah. Yep. It was a huge deal because the Pope is the Pope because he's the Bishop of Rome, but if he's not in Rome, how can he be the Bishop of Rome? And Rome really suffered because Rome didn't have any industry except for the Catholic Church. And if the Catholic Church is not in Rome, they make no money. It ended in 377. Gregory the 11th finally went back to Rome, and that actually started the Great Schism, which was in the Western Church. Didn't last very long, but at one point we had 3 popes, and they all said they were pope, and everybody elected those 3 popes, and then they finally got together, and none of those people became pope, and they elected a 4th guy as pope. 1492, anybody know that one from school?
Columbus.
Yep.
It's a great Columbus.
So he was Catholic, and he was the first Catholic probably to step foot on the New World. I suggest anybody go learn more about him because all the bad stigma right now. I might be a little biased because I'm part of the Knights of Columbus. I work for them, so. Yeah, and then later in life he did become a Franciscan, which is pretty cool. I did not know that. 1517, a lot of people might know this one. It was a big thing in the church.
Well, is that when they
Oh,
established
so
the...
Trent,
Close. It was when Martin Luther
Martin
Yep.
Luther.
Martin Luther nailed his 95 Thesis
Oh,
on
yeah.
the church door. Everybody makes a big deal thinking, oh, he made this big groundbreaking thing by nailing the thing on the church door. It wasn't that big of a deal. And he wasn't trying to break away from the church. He had 95 things he wanted to discuss. And their bulletin board was the church door. So not only was his 95 things on there, well, there were papers all over the place of different university events. So by him nailing it, it was just like him putting a post-it note on a corkboard.
Yeah, because the painting is just like him with just that one piece of paper.
Right, and then they make it some groundbreaking thing, and no, he was reading the Bible and he read this passage, and he was like, wait a minute, and something clicked in his head, and he wanted to discuss things, and over the course of discussing, he realized a lot of things weren't right, church said, no, you're wrong, the Pope was not really fast at responding, and then now we have the Protestant Reformation.
All because of a thumbtack?
Basically.
And it's interesting, my sister worked in Rome for 2 years. And you can go into the archives underneath. There are bags and bags and bags of Martin Luther.
Oh, really?
Because he was a Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
So his whole history is in the archives at the Vatican. So it's kind of interesting because as a religious community, all of our material is in the archives. And at that time, it's all in brown paper bags, she said. And of course, it's climate controlled. Well, you can just walk down there and you can find all the bags of the woman who started our community.
Wow.
And then you can find all the bags of Martin Luther. These are like, wow, okay, we forgot he was a Catholic.
It was
They
a
have all of
university
his
church.
works down there. Kind of interesting.
So
Yeah.
founder of your organization was a bag lady?
No. She was from Germany, but you know, they kept everything from religious communities because they were approved by Rome. Once you were approved by Rome, all of your history is in the archives, which is interesting.
Has it been microwaved and everything?
I have no idea what they've done with those. But when we were writing the letters, a book of our foundress, that's where they went, the brown paper bags, and looked at everything she had written.
I found out something when I was Grand Knight. In St. Louis University, there is a microfiche archive there of all of the documents of Rome.
Really?
And they're available to Knights Columbus members.
I will have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Have
well,
to go
they've got
visit
them,
that.
they've got them in several places in the world so that they won't have another Alexandria thing where everything got burned up, you
Yeah.
know? So that the Knights of Columbus paid for microfilming all the important documents in the Vatican.
Well, it would be interesting to see. Maybe they do have them, but they probably have the originals from the founder and the foundresses.
Yeah, I'll have to check over there, because all
Yeah.
the history of your organization,
Would be over
at
there.
St. Louis University, a special library there just for that, you know.
That's interesting, yeah.
So another cool thing I wanted to mention in Martin Luther, that's the Renaissance. The Renaissance was not very good for the Pope. There were two popes, Leo something or another, and another one. They were both part of the Medici family.
Yeah.
And they were more worried about being Pope as opposed to doing the job as Pope. Which is one reason why they say that Martin Luther and Henry Calvin, another Protestant Reformation guy, was able to be as successful because they were slow to react. 1531, this happened in Mexico. I wonder if anybody can guess that.
Oh, yeah, Our Lady of Guadalupe, huh?
Yep. I don't know the full story on that, I just know that was pretty awesome. I didn't realize it happened that far back too. That was a long time ago.
They say if you go to I think it's in Mexico, you can see the cloak
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah.
Our Lady of Guadalupe.
I watched this perspective documentary on it, and it says that they studied it to a microscopic level, where even in the reflection of the Blessed Virgin's eye, you can see Juan Diego reflected there. It's
Oh, wow.
So it's a miracle for sure.
Yeah.
It's not like Juan Diego just took a few hours to paint this on there. It came about a miracle.
Yeah, I think they detected no dyes, no
Yeah.
paints on it. It's one solid piece of cloth. It's
Well, even the material usually only lasts about 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's still as fresh today as it was then.
So 1534, this is important from universities like SLU. St. Ignatius of Loyola formed the Society of Jesus. There's him and 6 other people. St. Xavier was one of them. They formed the Jesuits, which run lots of universities like Notre Dame and SLU. And cool thing about the Jesuits, and I don't know if they still do that, but they swore all those oaths of poverty and all that stuff, but they swore one more. They swore loyalty to the Pope. And do they still do that?
I think so.
None of the other orders swore loyalty to the Pope, but the Jesuits did.
In St. Louis, I used to work in City Hall, and the mayor of the city of St. Louis was angry at the Jesuits, or the bishop at that time was angry at the Jesuits because they moved from the downtown area way out into Indian country. They'd left the downtown area, and he was going to throw them out of St. Louis. He was so mad. But that Indian country is where they are right now, on Grand and Lindell. Yeah.
I think some of the first missions here in Illinois were Jesuits, right?
Yes, there were a couple
Yeah,
of
they
them.
came
and Franciscans, Jesuits. Mhm.
It was all French.
Yeah. I know the Jesuits and the Dominicans, they're both about learning, so sometimes they clash, because they don't always agree, but they're both super smart, and anything that they do is pretty awesome. Also in 1534, I don't know if anybody can guess this one, it has to do with the Tudors in England. It was the official parliamentary act of supremacy. It's where they said that the King of England is the head of the church in England and officially broke away from the Pope. So he could get a divorce. And then 1545 is the Council of Trent. The Council of Trent was the official response to the Protestant Reformation. So if you go back to 1517 to 1545, that's a lot of time before the church had her official response. The Council of Trent is considered one of the biggest and most successful councils, probably up until Vatican II. It did a ton of stuff that we could probably spend 2 hours talking about. It reaffirmed the 73 books of the Bible. It came out with the new missal. It used the Tridentine Mass forever. Yeah, we used that for 400 years, the Tridentine Mass. So it was a big, big thing. What was the Catechism of the Council of Trent was the main catechism too for
We had the Baltimore Catechism.
Baltimore Catechism.
That's what I grew up on.
That's what I grew up with too. We had to stand in line every day at school and recite 5 questions from the Baltimore Catechism.
Oh, wow.
And if you didn't know them, you had to sit down, study them, and get up again. That was our religion text. But at that time, we also had a Bible study book, which I really liked. Well, you had the Baltimore Catechism, and then they would also teach Bible history with stories, that were easy to read, and then you had to answer questions. But
You
they were
grew
great
up-
books.
You grew up in Aviston.
Yes. Uh-huh. That's what we did.
Well, the bishop, when he confirmed you, he would ask you questions. And he'd point to you, and then he would ask you one of the questions that was in that book.
In that Bible, in that book.
And then you'd stand up and you'd give your answer. And of course, the nuns were sitting behind you, nervous.
You better know
You
that.
better know that.
Yeah.
Do they still ask questions?
Well, Bishop Braxton did.
Yeah,
I don't know what Bishop McGovern will
I know
do.
Bishop Gregory asked me a question, but it was, what's your favorite prayer? So
Oh,
that was a
yeah.
pretty easy question. It wasn't anything catechetical or anything like that. So.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
No, they
happy
didn't necessarily.
Yeah, I'm happy they didn't do that. I would have froze. My favorite thing in front of people, but not when you do something random like that.
Oh, we knew the book by heart, though.
Oh, yes, 150 questions.
Yeah.
Mm.
I've still got one.
Do you have one?
I'll bring it around so you guys can see. My
You can see
Baltimore
it.
Catechism. It's about this thick. It's numbered,
Uh-huh.
about 100 pages, but yeah, but everything we needed to know was in there.
Mhm. And you remember a lot of the questions and answers.
It sticks with you when you
It does.
memorize stuff. When you
Yeah.
memorize stuff, it's like, of course, I only know the things I want to know.
I need to know, huh? Need to know.
The things I don't want to know, I don't know nothing about.
1600. This is just a fun little thing. Pope Clement VIII sanctioned the use of coffee.
Oh,
Yep.
there you go.
It was a Muslim drink, and a lot of priests were saying that this is the devil's drink.
Oh,
And they wanted the Pope to condemn coffee, and he tasted it and said, "This is wonderful." And he loved it, and now everybody drinks coffee.
there you go. What would we do without coffee?
Right.
Did they have a stock market at that time?
If they did, they probably would have went out.
That's
1674, the Diocese of Quebec was formed. It was the first diocese in North America. So this area was part of that Diocese of Quebec. 1699, anybody guess that one? That's local.
Local?
Mhm.
Diocese of Belleville?
Not quite. The Cahokia Mission was
Oh,
formed.
they're going, yeah.
Oh.
So they had the mission there was part of the Diocese of Quebec. And the church was rebuilt in 1799, and it's still there.
Uh-huh.
It is not the oldest United States church, because I looked it up. It's the oldest, second oldest in the continental United States. The oldest in the United States is in Puerto Rico. It's the Cathedral of San Juan.
Wow.
Then there's,
They still have mass there.
In Cahokia.
Cahokia. Yeah,
It's in Latin.
is it?
Yeah, and the women wear veils.
Yeah, it's in the Diocese of Belleville, it's where you can go for Latin Mass.
I did not know that, because I wanted to go see a Latin Mass. Or I go to St. Louis. I'm like, I'm too lazy to do that.
Well, you'll have to check when they have them, but I think they have one every
Well, there's a
Sunday.
priest that
Yeah.
comes over from St. Louis and
Uh-huh.
does it.
It's a cool building. I was there at one of the Knights Council meetings, and I was just taking a look at the building. It's a cool little log cabin church.
Yeah.
Well, and you can call what is the parish there?
Holy Family.
Holy Family, and you can ask for a tour of that church and they'll give you one.
Mhm.
Yeah, which is great.
And the next oldest is in New Mexico. San Miguel Mission is older than the Cahokia Mission, but not by much. And then speaking of Baltimore Catechism in 1789, the Diocese of Baltimore was started. So that was the first United States diocese. So then this area became part of the Diocese of Baltimore. (1839). This is not very proud American history, but Pope Gregory the 16th declared the official opposition to the slave trade. And some of the southern U.S. Catholics ignored that. (1854).